All right, good morning. Let's go ahead and get started with Judiciary Committee meeting today. Ms. Ogden, if you'll call the roll for us.
Senator Albritton, Senator Bell, Senator Carnley, Senator Coleman Madison, Senator Elliott, Senator Figures, Senator Gavan, Senator Orr, Senator Singleton, Senator Smitherman, Senator Stutz, Senator Weaver, Senator Barfoot.
Here.
10, and we have a quorum.
Awesome. Before we get started on the agenda today, I'd like to ask Mr. Eric Henniger to come up. Trial Lawyers Association's got some special guests that I'd like for him to be able to recognize and the committee have acknowledgement for.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. We got 3 members of our elite academy here from Birmingham. They are Jake Jondal, Gina Rigsby, and Jessica Zorn.
All right. Thank y'all for being here, and appreciate y'all being a part of the Judiciary Committee and working with a fine organization. So welcome. Thank you. All right. On the agenda, we'll start with Senator Figures, SB 223.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for putting this bill on the agenda. SB 23 is basically just amending the statute as it is already. The current statute only allows hearsay for the child victim who is less than 12, and the amendment would allow hearsay for child witnesses of violent crimes who are less than 12. This is important because we frequently have children who witness violent crimes. The child witness would have to testify in court and be subject to cross-examine, and this would make it consistent with the statutes relating to closed-circuit testimony and video depositions of children. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I can be, before and if you recognize me, the favorite report, I want to just make a quick comment. I fully support this bill. And this reflects what we're working on really today in ed policy about due process. That's what that is. And those are kids who are under 12 and have a right, you said, come and testify, and the accuser has a right to cross-examine or whichever form that they set that up. And I said it all the time, I've said it a couple times from the floor, is that in our process, everybody has due process but the children. that's a phase of trying to make sure children have due process.
Exactly.
And I'm just saying it should be school, anywhere else. If you're accused of something, you should have a right to confront your accuser. It don't matter about you, what it is age. Look, if you age enough to accuse somebody, the person who's being accused has a right to ask, what did you see and why it happened? Did you see this and see that? So I just commend the bill first because we're including these kids, making sure that people can hide behind that fact and not be convicted if they do some things to these children. You know,
This is
so,
the bill that I was telling you in education when you were talking about, when you had your due process bill before that committee, that this was coming.
I remember you were saying
Yes.
that. So, Mr. Chairman, if no objection, I move for favorable.
A motion for favorable, Senator Smitherman. I have a second, Senator Coleman Madison. I believe this bill goes well with the bill that you had, Senator Coleman Madison, last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, when we talked about in-court, video. So I think it meshes well with the bill that we've already passed and came out of committee with. So,
It just takes into consideration children.
right, a witness is a child.
Yeah,
Right.
the witness, yeah, and witnesses.
Senator Carnley.
I just had a quick question on this. Is the penalty for the child witnessing, is it the same? So if the crime that was committed is a misdemeanor, if the child witnesses it and that creates a crime, is it consistent with that? It stays a misdemeanor or becomes a felony?
Tricia Melberg is here from the DA's Association.
Ms. Melberg, if you would address Senator Carnley's question.
Yes, sir. What this does is this deals with the hearsay information, and the specific crimes are set out in 152539. It would be any sex offense, a violent offense that's already defined by statute, aggravated child abuse, assault in any degree, or any offense involving domestic violence, elder abuse. So those are the crimes that are therein. It does not create a new crime. It just allows those witnesses to testify, and after those child witnesses testify, if there's any hearsay, that hearsay would also be admissible.
Thank you, Ms. Melberg.
All right.
Mrs. Melberg.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? That being said, we've got a first and a second. Ms. Ogden, if you would call the roll for us.
Senator Albritton, Senator Bell, Senator Carnley, Senator Coleman Madison, Senator Elliott, Senator Figures,
Aye.
Senator Gavan, Senator Orr, Senator Singleton, Senator Smitherman,
Aye.
Senator Stutz, Senator Weaver, Senator Barfoot.
Aye. All right. Unanimous. We've got bills given a favorable report. Thank you, Senator Figures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee.
And you are, it's the Senator Figures show today. You're number 2 on the agenda. So,
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your favor. Okay, this is a bill that amends a bill that was already passed in the legislature that I sponsored back in, I think, 2017, that had to do with revenge porn. In fact, this was why I was invited to that meeting at the White House a couple of weeks ago. And what this one done is it's a technical amendment with in Section 13A6-111, where the age of the child victims under the statute is only defined in case law. This will place the age defined by case law into the statute. In Section 136A-6240, it amends the crime of distribution of a private image. This bill specifies the jurisdiction where distribution of private images or revenge porn can be prosecuted. This is needed because many of these cases occur using a cell phone. This would prevent the victim from traveling to another county that may be hours away when his or her private image is distributed. A similar statute where the jurisdiction is defined like this is identity theft. In 13A.13.3, it amends the crime of incest to enhance the penalty when the victim is under the age of 16 to a felony. Senator Carnley is going to present an amendment that would change this age, that they would be 16 and under. It also removes 17 and under, in the other parts of the bill. Also removes the language that a conviction cannot be based on the uncorroborated testimony of the victim. This is the only sex offense that has this language. There is well-established case law that a sex offense conviction can be obtained by the uncorroborated testimony of the victim. Since sex offenses occur behind closed doors, it is often only the victim's word. And as we know, many times those victims don't come forward to say what happened, because many times, they're not believed, or they're put under such scrutiny that they just don't do it. So with that, if there, Senator Conley, you want to?
If you got,
you want to take that first? I have
well, let's go ahead and talk about it. We'll talk about the bill itself, and then if you want to introduce the amendment after that, Senator Smith.
And Mrs. Melberg, if she could come back forward in case there's something that
Ms. Melberg,
she can
Senator Smith may have
clarify.
a question for you.
I have two questions. One, I see in here that y'all are changing it to where you can have the hearing where the victim lives. I don't see in here where you have a hearing where the accuser lives. I said that you know I'm all for this. Let me just say that 1,000%. So I have to say that. So when you hear me ask what I ask, you don't get confused whether or not I support what you do. I support it 100%. But I mean, I'm just this is the lawyer and come out in me.
Yes, sir.
If a person accused and they in the county with the victim, they guilty. They guilty. I mean, whether they guilty or not, they guilty. The emotions. You can come into the legislature, just say something about one child or something, then we want to, we're going to change everything that fake 5.5 million because of that one little thing that's a comment people make about it, because people get emotional about it. I got grandkids and I kids too. I get emotion too. But it's going to be difficult. They're going to be guilty and they have to prove they're innocent. If the judge doesn't have an option, that option to decide either way, so in statute, what we're doing is cutting that off. Right now, the judge, am I right, until we cut this off, the judge could decide whether they want to have it there or wherever they want to have it based on that.
Okay, I think I have something that can help you with this.
Okay.
So with the statute, just so everybody else knows that we're talking about, it's distribution of a private image, which is currently referred to as revenge porn. So it's when someone takes an image and the image is expected to be just kept within that relationship, and they have to distribute the image to harass, annoy, or alarm the victim. And so this is the statute we're talking about. What we did with jurisdiction is it's not only where the victim lives. The jurisdiction could be anywhere any of the part of the crime occurred,
I read.
Anywhere that the image was received, or in the county where the victim lives. So the reason it's like that is you may have a boyfriend, girlfriend that live here in Montgomery County, and that particular individual goes to the beach. Let's say they go down to Baldwin County, and while they're in Baldwin County, they send that image out. Well, this would allow the actual complaint to be filed either where the victim lives here in Montgomery County or down in Baldwin County where it occurred, or if they send it to a friend in Tuscaloosa County and it's received in Tuscaloosa, the charge could go forward in Tuscaloosa. So this is where that would go. This would not take away anything regarding our change of venues. So if there's a change of venue filed because of publicity or because of whatever, the court would still have that discretion to do that change of venue later if they needed to. This just addresses where jurisdiction is for that particular charge to be reported and filed with the police department.
But I interpret this, and you can correct me, and I may have to get other interpretation, that however it can be in any of these places that we just mentioned, any of them, not just because we're saying what you just said, any of them, and the one with the victim, with the defendant, is not listed in here. And I mean, this is a statute. And what it says is what the judge is going to do. We can talk about discretion, but he's going to follow this so he won't be reversed.
Or she.
Or she. All right. And I should say she.
Tell Judge Smitherman on you.
Don't you tell her. But I want to eat when I get home Thursday. but I'm saying that needs to be included in that. Because it is a such thing that people falsely accusing people. That exists. I know y'all train the thing one way. Y'all think on this side, get them. That's the way y'all they get them. But it's another side to it. I'm looking at two lawyers sitting over here. I think they'll agree with me that it's two sides to the situation. We sometimes on both sides dealing with stuff. But so I think that needs to be in there. That the victim, that is one of the options that needs to be listed. The second thing is that I need for someone, whether it's the sponsor or you, to show me in here or find that part in this bill that makes it distinctive that we are talking about porn. Because if we just say images, I'm gonna give you a clear example of one. You know, you had a baseball game, little league game, you know, and you got these players over there, and you take a picture of them, and then you go show the picture, especially our campaign. You had the little league, you taking with the kids, and you ain't got a release from everybody on the picture. And then now you put that on your campaign. I'm here with the kids or whatever. Senator, you guilty of taking somebody's image and doing something else with it. Whether the intention, I know you're gonna say intent and all that stuff, but bottom line, you got to go to court. You got to pay a lawyer. You got to do all that to correct that it wasn't meant for any reason like you're saying. So I would like if we talking about porn, we talking about trying to. Can I finish?
I was just going to show you where it is in the bill.
I was in the middle of my sentence, though. That's all I was. I'm saying, let me finish. That if that's the case, then we need to make the distinction, and then, you know, to make sure that we talking about porn and not leave the interpretation that a judge could say any image that you do wrong, you know, publish about somebody. Then if you don't have a written release, then you guilty. You could be guilty under this right here because it's saying images. So, Madam, I'll yield. Mr. President, back to the sponsor.
Senator Figures.
Now, Senator Smith, if you would look on page 4.
Okay.
Starting on page 92.
Line 92.
Line 92, page 4. And if you read A and B, well, that whole section actually describes exactly what images we're talking about. A person commits the crime of
But the middle of it concerned me, said the person has not consented to the transmittal. I see what those are areas that set out.
No, but you were talking about the type of images. So
they don't talk about the type. They just talk about what you're going to try to do with the image. It says you're trying to otherwise distribute private image with the intent to harass, threaten. That has nothing.
But it also says who is engaged in any act. Look on line 103.
Okay, let me look at that.
And I think I can help too for the rest of the committee, if that's okay. Section B defines what a private image is, and it lists that a private image has to be sadomasochistic abuse, sexual intercourse, sexual excitement, masturbation, or breast nudity, or genital nudity, or other sexual conduct.
Good.
So it actually,
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Better be on the baseball
with that point, but the first point, I think we need to address that venue or whatever it can be had in that place also, because the inherent bias, you know, that just comes with nature on the charges that exist now. I mean, I'm biased. You hear what I'm trying to say? I mean, I think they ought to zap them and burn them all up. Yes, that do something like this. You know, you people shouldn't do stuff like that with kids and stuff. But you see where I'm coming from. I
do. I think if we could talk further about it, or
excuse me, Mrs. Smith, Senator, this is already in law.
What's
this
that?
Is law. We passed this in 2017.
I'm going to help you out, Senator. I understand, but we also getting ready to amend that law to put what you putting in there. So that law is back before us, and that's an issue that may have been overlooked when we did the law.
But what exactly is it that you're seeking to change?
Well, if
clarify more.
I was just saying that if we are listing in here all the places that the case can be brought, and the one is omitted is the place where the defendant lives. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That should be in there also. That might be the proper place for it
But
to be done.
don't they have that right to make the charge there too?
So the victim could file a police report and file a charge wherever any part of the crime occurred, where the image was actually received by a person or where the victim lives. So the actual initial instigation of the crime would be by the victim, and the victim would be able to file it.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, once you release an image on Facebook, say for instance, it's all over the world. Is essentially. So I guess I'm thinking, I guess I'm hoping that the victim can file it wherever they want to file it, which could also be in the defendant's area as well. But then that defendant's lawyer would still have the right to ask for a change of venue if there was a trial, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, what do you wanted to say? Just to put the defendants.
I want you all to address that. I don't have no problem voting this bill out like it is or anything, but that's an issue that I would like for you to get with her on to address.
Yes, sir. I'll come see you about that, and
You
I'll
can see her.
No, you can
Senator
you,
figures as
I'm
well.
not-
Sponsor, I'll go along
No,
with
but
y'all do.
I need
can
your
tell you the
language.
problem.
If you give me the language that you're seeking to put in it, so
I
I
don't
have
have
a
any
full
language.
understanding.
I don't have any language. I just got to this meeting 10 minutes ago and I had no language. Not that fast. I don't have any. And so that's why I'm shifting to her and you, because you the sponsor. I'm respecting me as a sponsor, but I'm putting it on her. You know,
I'm
she
fine
knows.
with it.
Cause see, if I come up with some language and they don't like it and they said something, then we got to go through a whole
That's the
thing.
starting
of that.
point of
But
the
if she
negotiation,
come with
Senator.
some, I'm gonna take it.
Okay,
I mean,
we'll just get together.
Yeah, it sounds like there's an agreement at least to continue work on there, and an amendment should be a simple amendment, or where the defendant resides to add into this
Yeah.
language here. And so
That's
that
no
being said, I
problem.
think Senator Orr had a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good bill, Senator. Appreciate your bringing it. I guess my one area of concern, and I certainly don't mind moving this bill out of committee, is the uncorroborated evidence.
Okay.
And I think about,
What page are you on?
it's the last page, page 6.
It would be during the crime of incest.
So, you know, we all can agree incest is a horrible, disgusting thing. Where do we stay? Or do other states, and I heard Senator Figure say case law is generally in this area not requiring corroboration. Is that in the norm or mainstream of the other states, or where are we with this? Because I think of the case, and Senator Smitherman alluded to earlier, when you're accused, in the minds of most people, you're guilty. And it's hard to unring that bell. And does uncorroborated mean no physical evidence either? Or is that something that we could put in there? You know, you think about a president back 20-something years ago where there was corroboration and a physical evidence. You know, what in a different context, but somewhat similar.
I think I can help you with that.
Yeah. So, you know, you understand, you're a child accuses you, you're guilty in the minds of most.
So typically in our rape charges, our sodomy charges, our sexual abuse charges, there is well-established case law here in Alabama. I can't speak to other states because I have not researched that. But in Alabama, where it says a conviction can be held on the uncorroborated testimony of a victim. So what we have a lot of times is we have our child victims and the accuser. It will happen, and they'll be the only two there.
Right.
And when
I
it comes
get that, but
when it comes to I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. Just is there some physical, usually in the courts that's required, some physical evidence of?
I would say very, very rare. So I prosecuted solely child sex crimes in Montgomery for 8 years, and I may have had forensic evidence in a handful of cases. And I don't know how far you want me to go for this committee, but the way the body is designed, it's designed to heal very quickly. And so how we would explain it to juries is if you bite your lip, that is healed by the end of the day. That applies to other areas of the body as well. And so the majority of the time, there is no medical evidence at all in these cases. Now, we still would have to have probable cause like we do in any criminal case. This would just make incest consistent with how we handle our rape cases and our sodomy cases and our sexual abuse cases as well. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking, we need to protect children. Everybody agrees with that. I'm thinking of that 1 out of 100, and that may be even fewer than that, where you have some sophisticated accusers and they accuse, a parent or step parent of something that how you gonna unring that bell?
Yes, sir.
And kids with social media, they communicate, and if the parent's cracking down and they don't like it, you could start some dominoes going that it'd be a bad ending. So
I think one of the concerns that you're suggesting may be in the context of a divorce type proceeding, a nasty divorce, that you could
I didn't
see
think
that
about that.
coming up.
Yeah, I'm kind of cold on this one, but
I think I can help with that as well.
okay. Well, we can talk after the committee hearing today. I'm just
Yes, sir.
curious of if there's some kind of guardrail, safeguards, or
Yes.
something to
Yes, sir.
make sure.
And just for a quick answer for the committee, we would vet that charge just like we do our rape charges and our sodomy
I
charges.
understand, but you got some sophisticated, and you got aggressive DAs that want
Talk to
to
'em.
make do right and protect children. I get it; that's their job, but they're also elected.
I'll come see you.
Let's talk.
Yes, sir.
Be long.
Because we're making it a Class A felony now,
That's
so
right.
you're talking about a long, long time
Yeah.
for that 1 out of 100,
Life.
and it could be more
Like,
Life.
or less. So we'll talk.
I'll come see you.
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Smith, yes.
I'm just quick. I was gonna say, though, what you hear around here is the wings that I'm talking about on the airplane. This bill is the airplane, and all those, kids pulling. But all this you hear is the wings that destroying and tearing up. That's why I said from the floor, look, think about what we're doing in it's wings that killing people. Even though we focus on this, what we want to pass, but we taking people out on the side. So I just wanted to use this as an analysis that this is the same thing I was talking about.
I understand unintended consequences.
Yeah,
I think
that's
is what
it.
you're trying to say.
I like them legal words.
Senator Figures.
well, thank you both, Senator Smithman and Senator Orr, for your suggestions and input. And I and Mrs. Melberg will get with you to satisfy that. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like for Senator Carnley to submit his amendment.
Senator Carnley, you have what I'm assuming is a friendly amendment, Senator Figures?
Yes,
Yeah, I
sir.
spoke with the sponsor
spoke with
earlier. I
both of
don't
us.
have the amendment from LSA yet. We submitted it this morning before we came. But what it does is on page 1, line 9, page 3, line 79, and page 6, line 153, it changes the age that's printed in here from 16 to 17. In Alabama, child pornography is anybody 17 years or less. And this would just make it consistent with who a child is when it comes to this law.
Let me say this, and obviously this is my first year chairing, and we have a new system. It's my understanding that we really need something in writing before we attach an amendment to it. With that being said, without voting on the amendment, is it the desire of the committee that that's something that should be considered at least on the floor?
If it's friendly and they worked it
It's
out,
keeping
I'm
it
fine
consistent
with it.
in the law as it is,
They fine
as he
with it.
said, with the age of the child.
me.
So
So I would suggest then, because we don't have it in written format this morning, that we proceed on the bill as it is, that y'all continue to work together and offer that amendment on the floor. And I think I'm safe enough to say that at least the will of the committee is that that's something that be considered favorably once we get it on the floor.
So that would be 3 different things that we will be considering on the floor.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say
Yes, sir.
that I would ask my colleague, if you got it in handwriting, the way you read it off, that's what it is. Send that in, and then they'll juice it up and put it in typing. But I mean, we handwrite them. I mean, I have 10 years that folk handwrite them right at the place, and
I'm
if
good
it
with
fits,
bringing it on the floor if
Okay.
that's cleaner for you. Just
I
so we
would
don't
rather
get
that
into-
too, if
that's
they
fine.
haven't.
I'll do that.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments and look forward to seeing that amendment on the floor. Senator Figures, you motion for favorable on the
Yes, sir.
bill
I
itself.
second.
It is second by Senator Smitherman. Any opposition using previous rule? Hearing none, the bill is given a favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the
Thank
committee.
you. We're going to jump a little bit out of order, and I apologize. Representative Treadaway is here. I think he's got a committee meeting that starts, that he is chairing in about 2 minutes. So
Chairman.
welcome to the committee.
Chair, and
I move to carry this over.
I get to my meeting in time.
Representative Treadway.
That's not one of my reps right there.
What this bill does is just update the stalking laws. We currently do not have a definition for electronic tracking device, and that's what this does. It puts it in here. It was actually Senator Shelnut came to me with a Trussville detective that had a problem getting a warrant on this situation where an individual at a nightclub placed a device on a female's car and tracked her, and then ended up over at her place of residence some days later and had an issue getting a warrant because it's not defined in the stalking law.
I move for report.
Consider a motion for favorable Senator Smithman, second by Senator Gavan. Any discussion on the bill?
I just want to say thank you for bringing this as a victim of a stalker. It wasn't with an electronic device as far as I know, but as a victim, I appreciate you doing more to help protect people.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Figurs. Any opposition, any other discussion? Any opposition using previous role? Actually, first and a second, any opposition using previous role? Hearing none, bill's given a favorable report, and I think you've probably got about 60 seconds.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, next bill is Representative Chestnut. Representative Chestnut, if you'll come up and talk about your bill. Thank you for being here,
Yes, sir.
and good to see you again.
Yes, same here, lawyer. Good to see lawyers.
Absolutely.
All right. So my bill is HB 4, and it deals with microchipping of employees. And so what this is going to do is to prohibit the microchipping of employees against their will. Obviously, if an employee wants to be microchipped, selects or elects to do that, then that's their choice. But this is saying that you can't tie any type of benefits or deny any benefits to an employee if he or she refuses to be microchipped.
Okay. Senator Orr.
Mr. Chairman, I've been working with the House sponsor and actually reached out to him some time ago and told him I liked his bill and wanted to help him in the Senate. He has given me what I would call a friendly substitute. I'd like to offer it this time.
What does it
I
do?
think the members have it in their package. And
Okay.
Senator Orr, if you could give us an idea what that sub does.
I'm going to let the sponsor
Okay.
address this substitute.
Yeah, so what that substitute does is it actually it's more of a technical substitute than anything else. So there was a section about the definition of a microchip and the definition of what is voluntary. And if you look at those definitions, we took on the microchip definition, I think that last sentence, and we put it down into the voluntary, which deals with if a person gets like a medical device, a medical microchip. So that it cleans it up and it just makes it a better bill.
I'll move for favorable report on adoption of the, or whichever way on
Got
the.
a motion for an adoption of such. Senator Smitherman. Senator Gavan with the second. Any discussions?
I just have a question.
Sure, Senator Figures.
Are there actually businesses that are requiring that you have a device, a microchip implanted, which means you would have to cut one's
That's what I'm
body?
talking about.
Yeah,
Right.
it goes like right here. So we do have business in the United States that's doing that openly, up in Wisconsin. And it is actually, this thing is really taking, going pretty far in Europe right now. They've been using microchips as a way for public transit, where you go in and you scan. And there's also a company now that's pushing I think it's out of Switzerland, is pushing the idea of using a microchip instead of like a credit card.
Yeah, but that could go so much further than just for those things and tracking a person, just like he just finished talking about the devices. And I can see it also interacting with this alternative intelligence stuff. This is crazy. Thank you for bringing this.
Thank you, Senator Figures. Any other comments or questions regarding the sub? Got a first and second on that. Any opposition using previous rule to adopt the sub? Hearing none, then the sub is adopted. Now we're on motion for favor by Senator Orr, second by Senator Smitherman on the adopted sub. Any opposition using previous rule on that? Hearing none. Bill is given a favorable report as substitute. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, committee.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Representative, are you sure you don't want to name this one after you?
You've
a joke.
You've
That was a
tongue-tied the lawyer. You've done a good job. So thank you. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you bringing the bill.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. HB 230. I know Representative Simpson was not here. I think Senator Weaver was going to handle that. She had to be excused. So I'm going to do my best to kind of muddle through this. And I'd ask maybe Ms. Milberg to come up and take a stab at any questions that, Ms. Milberg still here? Okay. HB 230 by Representative Simpson. Ms. Milberg, if you could give us an idea of what this bill attempts to accomplish, and it kind of puts you on the spot. I know you've looked at it and had some conversations about it. This is a bill that I think helps first responders when they come in contact with someone who knowingly, recklessly, or intentionally causes them to be exposed or by ingestion or inhalation, Scheduled 1 controlled substance, chemical substance. So,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Milberg, if you would address the bill,
Yes, sir. I was trying to put my hands on the bill. So this is a bill that Representative Simpson was carrying in the House, and it would create the crime of chemical endangerment to a first responder. This falls into line with the issues that we've been having with fentanyl, where first responders come up on this and they end up getting injury from those controlled substances. So if a first responder suffered physical injury, it would make it a C felony. If the first responder suffered serious physical injury from coming into contact with that chemical, it would be a B felony, and if it caused the first responder's death, it would be an A felony. And for the fentanyl, it would include ingestion, inhalation, or contact with fentanyl or a mixture containing fentanyl. One thing that was removed, if you've looked at the House version, was exposure, because there were some concerns that there may be fentanyl or across the room, and that the law enforcement officer may be exposed to it, but it didn't cause any injury. So that language was removed. So now it only includes the ingestion, inhalation, or actual physical contact with that.
Senator Bell had a question for.
Mr. Chairman, I want to move for favorable. After watching 3 of our officers in our county have to go to the hospital on this, and then the female deputy with Jefferson County that was wearing her body cam and what they had to do to her after making an arrest on fentanyl, I just move for a favorable to protect our law enforcement, what they're having to do every day, and first responders.
Got a motion for favorable. I saw Senator Smitherman and Senator Singleton both.
You want to go first?
I just want to ask a question.
Yes.
This is about Schedule 1 drugs also, right?
Yes, sir.
And what if they walk up and smell some marijuana and get a high from it?
They would have to have physical injury.
Okay.
So it would require that physical injury
just
as
wanna make
defined by law. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Smitherman.
I'm all for what you're trying to do. I'm just how. I guess what I want to say is that what we are saying here is that, first of all, if they walk into this room and that happens, okay, all right, we're making it a prima facie felony because of what happened to them. Okay, but what's the intent? The call. That knowingly. You understand what I'm getting at now? Yeah, I think you do as a DA. I mean, you walk in the room and they get sick and that happened. I mean, but just because they walked in the room, and you understand where I'm coming from
Yes,
now?
sir.
Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing if they get this, you don't have to just
Yes, sir.
throw it on them, or they got it on their hands and they grab the officer, or the officer got the, Well, you understand what I'm getting at? Yeah, I understand where we're trying to go with this, and I'm gonna vote for it coming out. But you see where I'm trying to come from now, and as well as, unfortunately, but the inherent dangers of a job, just like a police officer, it's a dangerous job, and you understand the dangers when you decide to be that employee. It's just like, I pour steel, and I understand the dangers of it. Your eyelashes gonna get singed because you're over 2,600 degrees. All those things that happen. When I took that job and put that suit on, I knew that it would, and yet, you understand what I'm getting at now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Please address that.
Yes, sir. And I think the bill, it says, and hopefully this addresses your issue. If not, I'll definitely come see you. But it says it occurs when a person knowingly, recklessly, or intentionally causes or permits a first responder. Knowingly, intentionally, or recklessly.
That takes care of it. That takes care of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? We have a first by Senator Bell.
I second.
Second by Senator Coleman Madison. Any opposition using previous rule? If hearing none, then the bill is given a favorable report. Thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Melberg, for helping me out of that difficult spot. Thank you. All right, next bill on the agenda today is going to be my bill. Senator Ward, if you could come up, and we've had a week or so to look at this bill. SB 248, you all were provided a sub on this bill.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling me up. And although, sorry? Okay, I was just going to say, I know the next time I ask you to carry a bill for me, you're going to say, no, thank you.
Well,
much like Senator Gavan's ALI bill, when these loan bills come out, everybody's like, what are you really trying to do here? And I do want to thank the members of this committee who called me and I've met with. Senator Carnley, you and I met yesterday. Senator Barfoot and others in here have all met with me, and I appreciate the questions. When you have a bill this long, people are going to have questions, and I get it. Totally do. And I want to work with everybody's concerns. I do appreciate what this substitute does is we had some associations who came to me and said, hey, we have concerns. We want to make sure this is addressed. They were very technical, but I want to make sure everyone's concerns are addressed. And unlike some other associations who didn't come to me and kind of went behind my back, I do appreciate those who were public enough to say, I have a concern. Can you fix this? And so what the substitute does is, last week, I think Senator Figures, you told me, you said you have an amendment. Could you please make this into a sub so it's cleaner? So I wanted to follow your wishes on that. What we did here was the County Commission Association had a concern that we were changing the length of time for technical violations from days to hours. It was the same amount of time, but they were concerned about liability issues. And I totally agree with them. So we changed that back. That was one of the biggest changes. There's some other changes. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. The purpose of the bill is this, and you may have a memo in front of you here that the chairman of the board of pardon parole and myself, that we authored together, saying we agree with it because it does not change three things. And despite some of the rumors that some groups have spread, one, it does not anywhere in this bill change who gets released and who doesn't. That is not my responsibility. And I have to say this a lot. I have zero say in who gets paroled, who gets pardoned, and who doesn't. And to be honest with you, when I got this job, when I was appointed here, I was told that, and I'm okay with that. We're not trying to change that. The 2019 statute, which this bill's based upon, basically said, and it was sponsored by then Representative Rowe and myself in the Senate. So I was a sponsor of this bill. It separated the board pardon parole from the Bureau of Pardon Parole. They separated us. The idea was the Bureau would handle all the administrative functions. We supervise roughly 44,000 people that are active and inactive that we supervise on probation and parole. That is my function. It's also to carry out the administrative duties day to day. We have 64 field offices and about 780 employees. And that is my job. The board determines Do you get parole? Do you not? Do you get a pardon? Do you not? That does not change under this bill, despite what I've heard in the halls. But most importantly, I think what we discovered was 80-something times in the Code of Alabama, board, bureau, it's interchangeable. What we did not do, and part of this is on me because, again, I was the Senate sponsor, we should have changed some other areas in the code to identify where those change, where there should be bureau and board. So, for example, let me give you a basic example. Right now, I have the authority to go out and sign documents and do things on behalf of the board, and they have no say on it. It works well because I have a good relationship with both the board and my staff. But if you have a director and a board who butt heads, which we've actually had, then what happens is the board is basically at the mercy of my job, my office. And it's really not fair to them, which is why Chairman Guathney on the board said, yeah, I agree with you, Cam. This is not fair to us. We get along and it works. But if you get another director on the board who don't get along, then you got a problem.
Thank you. I know members have comments or questions. I'd ask you to keep in mind, we've got a public hearing. Senator Coleman's here and has multiple folks here who we will give an opportunity to speak today on the public hearing. So I just ask you to recognize that we do have that public hearing coming up, and keep your comments or questions to a minimum, but just so we can have those answered. Senator Albritton.
Thank you. Mr. Director of the Bureau, I think that's your title. Anyway, I see, at least in the fiscal note here, it talks about an increase on the state for any delays. Now, there's of a person that's being held in the county jail and for a hearing, and if that gets delayed, then the state continues to pay.
Very good question. Yes, sir.
Now, we also have another bill coming up that I've been trying to keep tampered down, doing the same thing, but it allows the local county officials to delay for particular reasons. Now, I'm concerned about the increase in costs.
Yes, sir.
There's no limitations on how many delays, no limitation on how long a delay you can allow. And are we talking about COVID, or are we talking about a sick child? I don't know. I'd like some kind of control on this. We also have the decrease. You got another thing there, but I think that's a decrease in dealing with the monitoring. I'm concerned about how this may have and the effects. If we do this and that other bill, is that a double dipping? Do I, instead of paying 28, do I pay 56? I'd like some clarification.
Yes, sir, and that's a very valid question. So what he's referring to is right now, we have a certain period of time by law we have to go in. If someone's coming up for a parole consideration, we have a certain period of time we have to go in and see you. Or if there's a revocation, there's a certain period of time. And there's a way to fix this, and I'm going to get in all kind of trouble when I get back to my office because I'm spitballing here, but there's a way to fix this for your concerns. What I see is right now during COVID drove all this. We had a certain period of time we had to meet with someone. We had to by law. And what we had prisons and jails that had lockdown because they had whether it be a COVID or a TB, something breaks out. And so legally, if you had a lockdown, no one could come in there. That means we couldn't legally meet the guidelines to meet with that inmate or meet with that person to say, are you qualified or not to be released? We extended that because if we have another lockdown, then we got to have time to get in there. We got to have time to see them. What you could do is just say only in a certain declared, I don't know how you would do it, declared emergency or something to do that. Because right now, during COVID, I think we would have had a lot of trouble because we couldn't see people within the statutory time to see them, to interview them.
I understand. The one other question I have in that regard is under the current law, when it is the money, the $28 is paid out of the budget of Department of Corrections. And this same thing is true here. So are you spending another agency's money?
No.
Just
no, sir.
I'm sorry.
And I've talked with Department of Corrections about this as well, but no, sir, that's not. No, sir.
How do I know that every question has to do with money with you, Senator Albritton?
That's the budget chair.
That's right.
That's the chair.
Senator Smitherman.
That'll cost you.
Sounds like my household, Senator Albritton. We talk about money all the time.
Hey, Senator Albritton, you can't take anything from nothing. So, nothing from nothing equals nothing. Senator Smitherman.
I'm going to be brief because I understand what you're saying. I want to say this to my friend. And all due respect, hey, former past Judy chair, we probably need to have a little reunion. We got all these Judy chairs in here. But I'm going to say this to you. If you had a chance to, I know you didn't because you've been working, but to hear my comments that I made yesterday, I must understand this.
Yes, sir.
It's 91 pages. Everybody hear what I'm saying? And I cannot in conscience, openly pad something with 91 pages and no, it's not a fact. And, you hear this comment, and I thank you because you got me all of this yesterday. I had the whole package. But you can read this, but that don't mean you understand this. You see what I'm getting at now?
Yes,
yeah.
Sir.
So the fact that you had long enough to read and all that, I hope nobody ever say that to me because that doesn't go to the understanding of what I'm getting ready to do. And you the expert, and you got folks, and I'm gonna need to know. Not just in general. I see the general thing, but this 91 page, it changes a lot. I'm not saying it's not good changes, but this changes a lot. And I feel very comfortable in saying that I must know that, before I can, go to where it leaves our body. Or if it does, I definitely need to have all 91 read so I make sure that I have an understanding of what this is.
And Senator, I will say this, and that's why I was kind of joking with Senator Gavan on his ALI bill, because when you have a bill that long, you go, well, the first thing that's come up, and I've heard some of the snide comments on what is he really trying to do here? And we had the bill in here last week, and we're here again this week, and it's going to be in House Judy today. I would say this. There are 80-something changes in the code, and it goes from bureau to board to make sure that we follow what the 2019 statute gave us. I'm the first one to tell you, my name's on the 2019 statute. I don't want to change it because it looks bad on me. I want that statute to stay. But we tried to do a simple bill to say bureau to board, and what we discovered was because it's so spread out across the code of Alabama, there was no way to make it a 2-page bill. You actually had to go into each section and say, no, this is the board's duties. No, this is the bureau's duties. And that's why it's so long, but I totally respect and understand where you're coming from on the complexities of, hey, Cam, this is a long bill. What are we doing here?
Let me just say this as the Senate sponsor of this. I've heard from other folks on this committee and other folks outside the committee, other members that have some similar concerns. Senator Smitherman, not that they're against it. They just there's a lot of words on pages and a lot of wholesale moving of statutes and code sections. It's my desire. Today, having heard all those comments and acknowledging those comments here and in other places, to maybe have a vote on this today, an up or down, vote your conscience. It gives us an opportunity to further that discussion. I will promise the committee members that unless I have a majority of at least of the committee, if it does get out of here today, that we'll kind of tap the brakes and give everybody an opportunity to kind of look at a little bit further other members that aren't a part of this committee. So with that being said, I'd ask, I'd make a motion for favorable report. Second with Senator Smitherman. Any opposition to using previous role based on those conditions? No opposition using previous role. All right. Bill's given a favorable report, and we will be tapping the brakes on this and making sure that Senator Figures.
I just wanted to say, I know I had suggested about the substitute to make it easier. And this reminds me of when we used to tease in years past about Big Bertha or threatening to have Big Bertha read. The new members don't know anything about that. But would it be easier? I know when I was working with the funeral home and cemeteries and pre-need issues, it was a big bill,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
we had to. I suggested that we split it up so that it could be a little simpler for people to digest and get. Is it possible that if this one does not succeed, is it possible for various issues in here to be separated somehow to make it easier, or it's not? You are so integrated with all of these, as you said, it can't be separated.
Yes, ma'am.
That's just a suggestion in the event this one is not successful.
Yes, ma'am. And I want to say this. First of all, thank you to all the committee members who have pigeonholed me and cornered me and said, hey, I got a question about this. I don't know what you're doing here. Totally get it. I mean, unfortunately, I'm a criminal justice nerd, so I study this stuff all the time, and it's just kind of flows. But it is confusing. I'm the first to admit it. I would say this. Thank you, Senator Barfoot, and I would ask all the members, whatever your concerns, questions, or you're worried about, call me, text me, pull me aside. I'll be glad to address your concerns. And I agree, this is not something that should ever move fast.
So you're saying that it cannot be?
No, I tried. We've done this for 2 or 3 years in a row, and it just hasn't.
Okay.
Mr.
All
Chairman,
right.
I didn't want him, I heard what you said, but I just wanted to clear you up with me. I need a 91-page tutorial, not the questions I got. I want to know. I just want to make that clear. He said, we ain't coming no questions. Look,
Yes, sir.
I may not know what to ask you.
I'm more than happy to sit down, though, with anybody in the chamber on this committee, because I get it. I know it's complicated, but just understand my door's open, and feel free to call me. I'm glad to talk with anybody.
Thank you.
Senator
And
Elliott,
just from a technical side, that vote to make sure members understand was an adoption of the substitute.
Yes, sir.
Everybody fine with using previous roll on that. That sub is adopted. Back on the substitute, any opposition to using previous roll on that, with the understanding that, thank you, we have a first and a second on that, with the understanding that this bill will go no further than what we've done today until I hear, at least from a majority of the members on this committee, that we think we're ready to put it to the body as a whole to consider. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank
I
you.
appreciate the members for their indulgence. Thank you.
All right. Any opposition to using previous roll based on those conditions? Hearing none, bill's given a favorable report. Thank you, Director Senator Ward. All right. That's right. Now, let's see. Let's go ahead and have our public hearing. I see, I know Senator Coleman is here. Senator Smitherman, did you have a question or comment? We're going to come back to this. I'm supposed to be in, we got 4 minutes, and I'm supposed to be in a committee to give a subcommittee report, but this is the ultimate absolutely importance. And
Thank you,
I know
Mr.
you've
Chair.
got some
I
folks
do.
that have come from all parts of the state.
They have, and I'm supposed to be in the same committee with the bill in just a few minutes as well. This is a bill that I had in the House for a couple of years, and glad to sponsor it now in the Senate. And Representative Matt Simpson and Representative David Faulkner are working downstairs on the same issue. So Senate Bill 127 shifts the financial burden of caring for child sex abuse survivors from the state to the perpetrators. So what do I mean? As of 2015, the total lifetime economic burden of those child sex assault victims or survivors in the U.S. was estimated to be at least $9.3 billion. About 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 13 boys have suffered from some form of child sex assault. In over 90% of those cases, the perpetrator is someone they know, a teacher, a coach, clergy, scout leader, or family member or friend. 85% of those child sex abuse survivors never report the crime against them. Of the remaining 15%, only 20% of those cases ever go to trial, and fewer than half of those get a guilty verdict or plea. That means that only about 1.5% of survivors of child sex assault ever received justice from the criminal justice system. And finally, really the average age at which a survivor of child sex abuse comes forward is actually the age of 52. So that's why, because of the age that most of these survivors come forward, SB 127 expands the statute of limitation for child sex abuse survivors. And really, I think the best way to relay to the committee what these folks are going through is for you to hear it from those survivors and those folks that actually advocate on their behalf. And so, Mr. Chair, I'll come back if you need me to. We're not the only southern state that is doing this. Georgia, Arkansas, Louisiana are other states that have passed this version of the bill. So with that, I was about to call you Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much.
Best to hear from them.
Thank you. We do have, it's a public hearing call today. We won't be voting. We will be hearing from some folks who have been affected by this and are proponents of it. And I thank you, Senator Coleman, for your passion on this topic. First of all, Mrs. Shipman, Ms. Shipman,
Yes,
if you could, and we're going to, we value your statements here today. I'd ask you to, if you could, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and we look forward to hearing from you.
My name is Lisa Shipman. I was asleep when my cousin molested me. My family silenced me when they told me that in lieu of my daddy killing my attacker, that we would just never speak of my cousin again. The trauma was compounded by the fact that this was not the first time someone who was supposed to love and care for me had violated their trust for their own perverse pleasure at the expense of my body and my mind. This was my third sexual assault. The second man to molest me was a neighborhood father who lured me into his lap with sweet treats. His wife would cook dinner for us as he had one of his hands in his pants and the other hand in my pants. If I was a good girl and kept our secret, I would get candy. I loved my rainbow, banana seat bicycle, puppies, and ballet, but I did not like the man who gave me treats. I was 9 years old. The first time I was silenced was after being raped by the older brother of my best friend while I was asleep on a beanbag chair. I didn't know my own anatomy or understand what was happening. My best friend made me pinky swear that we would never speak of the assault again. At 8 years old, I should have been catching lightning bugs and doing cartwheels, but I was hiding bloody panties and trying to make sense of things that my child mind could never comprehend. One freckle-faced, bobby sock-wearing little girl silenced 3 times. As a naive child, I was taught by men that my body was created for their sinful desires. I'm still filled with shame and feel that my body is dirty. I still awaken screaming in fear while kicking and hitting the evil men that live in my nightmares today. I trust few as I know that those who love you are the most likely to sexually assault you, as it's not the boogeyman who sneaks into your bed. I am scared of the dark and of people walking up behind me. My children were never allowed to have beanbag chairs as my body remembers the searing pain of being raped. Hopefully, one day I will be able to walk into a room with a window air conditioning unit without having a panic attack. 3 rapists, my body has kept the score. Child predators hide in plain sight in our families and institutions, as most victims are groomed and molested by someone they know and trust. Short statutes of limitations insulate predators and institutions, as the current law values the cost of insurance coverage over protecting children. Disclosure of my trauma was not a singular event. The financial burden of my abuse should not be mine as the innocent victim or at the expense of taxpayers. I was a child and couldn't take action myself. Those who could take action silenced me by pretending it never happened, and now the burden is mine alone to bear. SB 127 is important because someone you love is a victim. A passage of this bill is not an admission of guilt, but rather a path to justice for survivors. Allow my God to hold victims in his loving arms. Let the civil justice system judge guilt or innocence. I'm serving a life sentence for being a victim of rape. Complex PTSD does not simply go away. I sometimes wonder who I would have become if I had not been condemned to a lifetime of night terrors, fear, shame, and trust issues. Research shows the average age of first disclosure is 52. The close family relationships to all three of my rapists was a barrier to my disclosure, in addition to my being so young. I first disclosed my sexual abuse to my pastor at 25. I quickly learned that I was not emotionally ready or financially able to get the help I needed. It took another 25 years, a supportive and safe partner, and a trained counselor to finally begin the healing journey. The stigma of child sexual abuse kept me silent from 8 until 54, when I told my story for the first time in front of the House of Representatives last year in support of this legislation. I ask our great state if we are ready to stop protecting pedophiles. Alabama, it's time we do better. No more secrets. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shipman. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Stuart Vance. Mr. Vance?
Before I begin, a couple of things. The third witness on our list, unfortunately, was delayed getting out of Gadsden this morning, so she is not likely to arrive in time to be able to present her testimony. But there is a small binder on in front of each of you that contains the testimony of 6 of our core group who have been working on this legislation with Marika for the last couple of years. In addition to the 6 testimonies, there are also a number of data sheets and information sheets from Child USA Advocacy, an organization that's working on passing revival laws and statute of limitations reform around the country. If you have any questions, I can guarantee you that they will be answered by reviewing that documentation. My name is Stuart Vance. I was born, raised, and live in Huntsville, Alabama. I am 59 years old. And when I was 16, I was sexually assaulted by a teacher in high school. I didn't tell anyone at the time what happened to me. A combination of fear and embarrassment kept me quiet then and in the intervening years. In 2018, I decided I could no longer let that abuse have control over me. When I told my story, I found 6 other students at the school who were abused by the same teacher, and I have no doubt that there are more. 4 of us filed police reports, and we were initially hopeful that some criminal action would be taken against our abuser. Unfortunately, many of the assaults took place prior to 1985, leaving us no recourse in the criminal justice system. I found other survivors around the state who had similar tales to tell. As we researched the child sex abuse, or CSA, laws of Alabama and other states, we found that statute of limitation reform and revival laws are being enacted around the country, including southern states like Georgia, Arkansas, and Louisiana. One of the data sheets in there showed that Arkansas and Louisiana have a score of B on an A to F scale. They have stepped forward to help survivors. SB 127 is about accountability. Only 25 out of 1,000 CSA perpetrators ever see jail or prison time for the sexual assaults that they commit. The only way of bringing the remaining 97.5% of hidden predators to account is by bringing civil action against them. The Alabama District Attorneys Association and OPS recognize the limitations of the criminal justice systems when it comes to CSA and have endorsed our bill. Civil action is the only way that these predators can be brought to some semblance of justice. Some have expressed the concerns that SB 127 is too open-ended and that 36 years is too long of a period to allow survivors to come forward. Studies have shown that the average age at which a survivor of childhood sexual assault comes forward is 52. The current law in Alabama cuts off at age 25. What person in their early 20s has the emotional and financial means to take on an abuser? An abuser who is likely many years their senior and often a respected member of the community and substantially more well-off financially. Some might view this bill as being just about money. The only teeth that a civil judgment can impose is financial. These judgments should be painful to both the perpetrators as well as their enablers. Hitting them in the wallet forces them to change the practices that allowed the abuse to occur and remain hidden. More importantly is compensation for survivors, people who have been denied a lifetime of normal, healthy relationships and earning potential. These people have suffered losses for which they are owed. We've heard the insurance lobby is concerned about the costs of SB 127 to them. I would love to debate them on the relative merits of our bill and would have hoped to have heard their testimony today. They insured the Boy Scouts, churches, and other organizations that knowingly hid predators in their midst. If the insurance industry has a problem with our law, they really should take it up with the organizations they insured and not the survivors whose lives were damaged and destroyed. If SB 127 becomes law, the insurance industry is certainly likely to lose some money in the coming years. Experience in other states, however, show that the courts and insurance industry will not be overwhelmed by either lawsuits or insurance payments. There's a document in your packet on the relative success of state windows for child sex abuse claims. It shows that for a state the size of Alabama, we are likely to see dozens to a small number of hundreds of claims and not thousands. We are not asking for a gift. We just want the chance to make our cases in court. A case filed must still be won in the courts. Of the 6 members of our core group of survivors working towards the passage of SB 127, one was raped as a child by a scoutmaster and another abused by a priest. These 2 men could immediately participate in existing compensation funds upon the passage of SB 127 into law. Without this law, they have no standing to file claims. We ask that you side with survivors of childhood sexual assault. We deserve justice on our terms and on our schedule. You have a choice. Side with survivors or side with abusers. It's that simple. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, sir. Next on the list to speak today, and I apologize, is this Cordman? Is there a Lee Cordman? Okay. All right. I want to say to the folks who spoke today, thank you for sharing your stories, and more importantly, thank you for your courage. I cannot fathom how difficult it would be to live with that, and to come to a group of people that you don't know, have never seen, and to tell the stories that you've told today. So thank you for that. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is the second year that they've told these stories. So we're just asking, I heard you, Mr. Chair, say that you all were not going to vote on this bill today. When Stuart spoke, he mentioned something about the insurance companies. I have not heard from anyone yet. I just knew there was some type of opposition. I would like for somebody to come talk to me about what their issues are with this particular bill, because these victims, these survivors actually need some level of recourse. So again, we're behind other southern states. I mean, 2015, Georgia passed their Hidden Predator Act. Arkansas, 2002, updated it in 2021. So we need to give some type of recourse and some type of relief to these victims. So I'm hoping, Mr. Chair, we will consider some type of vote on this, and somebody please come talk to me about what the issues are so we can actually try to negotiate it. I can't combat it, or I don't know what it is at this point. I'm just hearing there is some opposition.
And let me, for those who may be listening to this committee hearing who may not be in here, let me advocate for you on that behalf, that they need, if there's opposition to it, that you need to be able to understand what their opposition is in order to come to some kind of an agreement potentially.
Yes, sir.
Address those. Senator Coleman, Madison, and then Senator Singleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't be long. Senator Coleman, I want to thank you for bringing this bill. You know, in Alabama, there's a lot of hidden secrets.
Yep.
This is one of those secrets that's been kept hidden too long. And our children, we know people that have been victims, or people in our community, people that we represent, and they are silenced in so many ways. Little kids in schools, it happens in churches. I mean, it happens on jobs. And this is something this guilt is something that the victims carry around with them for the rest of their lives.
Right.
They pass it on to the next generation. And so it's time for Alabama to step up and protect our children. If we are serious about really caring for people, we don't need to be protecting perpetrators,
amen,
and sexual abusers of young kids and people who are vulnerable. It happens with people who have disabilities, who are not able to speak for themselves.
Yes.
It happens to people who have mental illness. It happens to people who are elderly. We don't need to be protecting those perpetrators.
Thank you, Senator Coleman Madison. Senator Singleton.
Mr. Chairman, I found out over the years that the best way to get talking going is to move it. I think that this committee, like we've been moving all other bills out of this committee without it going anywhere. If you want people to come to the table, let's move it. And let's move it to the point to where it will not go anywhere until they come and talk to her. And we can't continue to protect these people, as the senator just alluded to, that we need to go on and move this bill so we can get some movement. If it stays in this committee, they're not going to feel that they have to come to the table. And it's going to look like you are protecting them or somebody's protecting them around this table. And so if we want this bill out and we're sincere about protecting them, because if this was a corporation, we'd be moving it if it was about business. So let's move it on behalf of human capital, because that's the best capital that we have is our people in this state, and they've been victimized. So if we can move this, I would like for you to reconsider a vote today, and let's get it out without it, with the consent that she would not move it until those people who are coming to talk to her.
Let's continue to have those discussions. It was set for just a public hearing today, and I don't want to put the members in an awkward position, not knowing ahead of time, knowing that it was only set for a public hearing today. Senator Figures.
Mr. Chairman.
I didn't know that. I don't know who you conveyed that to, because
I think it was on.
I didn't know that.
I think it was on the agenda that it was only set for a public hearing today.
Yeah, but
Senator
it's a
Figures.
public hearing, but you don't say whether to vote or not.
Senator Figures.
Mr. Chairman, typically in the committees, if it is a public hearing and the majority of the committee wants to vote on it the same day, then we would move forward. And I would ask you to take that into consideration. But I thank you too, Senator Coleman, for bringing this bill. And you know how I am about our children and protecting our children. And in 2019, this was before COVID, we had a page on the floor, and it was during the time we were dealing with the abortion bills and taking out or putting in the exceptions for incest and rape. And this young man came to me because I was trying to get the amendment on, and he heard me talking to the lawyers. And he came up to me and he said, Senator Figures, thank you for that, because I'm a victim of incest. And I couldn't do anything but just take him and hold him and cry right there on the floor. And so many of our children are suffering. And I'm now reading a book about the adverse childhood experiences. They call it ACEs. And it talks about the traumas that children go through, even from a toddler on up. It stays with them. Right. It stays in their DNA. And then they experience various mental,
it's like a PTSD.
Emotional, yes, it's a PTSD that stays with them pretty much for the rest of their lives. And many of them will block it out, but then something will trigger it. And I say all of that to say, it should be our duty to make sure we do all we do as legislators. And I totally agree with Senator Singleton. I think it is very unfortunate that whoever is holding your bill up does not have the courage and the decency to speak up and to say what it is that the issues that they have with this bill. And I, for one, would be for pulling it out, pushing it out today with your commitment, Senator Coleman, that it would not go any further until you worked out well, you all are the powers that be anyway, but I would just think to go on and pull this. You've been trying to do this for what, 2 years?
2 years.
And I would really ask our committee members if we would consider just going on and pushing this bill out and trusting it to the process.
And I would make that commitment, Mr. Chair, if it was the committee's pleasure to get this bill out, not to move it at all, waiting to, encouraging folks to come talk to me at the table to see if there's something that we can do.
Thank you. I appreciate and hear the concerns. It was put on today for a public hearing only. So with that being said, I would appreciate if you would let me know if nobody comes to see you or talk to you about this bill. And let's see if we can figure out who's against it, the specifics why, and I would ask that you keep me updated on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
can we put this back on then next week?
We will
Because I mean, basically, this is a 2-page bill, and we just passed out, a bill that was 90-some pages that we know nothing about, and it was subbed, and we haven't had time to read it, but we passed it out, and it has all these different section changes. This is a simple bill, and I'm wondering, are we part of the problem here?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, are you sure you don't know who's?
I do not.
So why are you so adamant about not passing it out?
Well, because I told Senator Coleman we would put it on today for only a public hearing. Is that our conversation?
You did tell me that, but again, if it was their pleasure, I would support moving it out. And not moving it at all.
We set it for a public hearing only today. We'll have those continued discussions, and we'll consider whether or not we can put it back on next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do I need to make another official request for it to come up?
No, you do not. It's on there. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Senator Gavan, next bill on the calendar, and I think this is one of those monstrosity bills as well. So keep that and those other comments in consideration. I would appreciate it.
So
this is SB 245.
We passed something like this as far as a voluminous. My first year, I didn't read that one either. That was a ALI bill. I did read the subsequent ones. I still have not yet read this one. I'm proud of you. And it could be that it's Big Bertha on there, but.
Comments or questions?
I have a question. Could you just kind of explain, because somebody spoke to you, or is there somebody here that could kind of explain exactly what this bill would do and what it means with the changes for the nonprofits?
Senator Van.
So what I would say to you, there is a sort of a cheat sheet up front in this that was prepared by ALI that talks about what it does. In essence, what the goal has been of ALI over the years is to revamp and keep us, basically keeping up with the Joneses, which means keeping up with Delaware. Delaware is a lot of our nonprofits in Alabama that are, we have some sizable nonprofits in Alabama or Delaware companies, and this is part of the idea that we would have a good of a model here as we do with corporations and everything else. There's no reason to go to Delaware. I think one of the issues that probably people still go to Delaware is that Delaware has a more developed body of corporate law in terms of case law to go to and to rely on than Alabama does. But since our laws are largely patterned after theirs, I think that would be persuasive authority for coming here. The one knock I've heard on this, and they have not come back to me, I did have one large Birmingham area nonprofit come to me, and their concern is when this kicks in for everybody else, or for everybody, not
smaller ones is what I'm.
The smaller ones. The cost of compliance, and that is a concern that has been raised. That's the only concern I've gotten that's come to me. And I asked for some specifics on that and hadn't gotten that back yet. But that is something, and and I didn't draft this thing, obviously. I've been the one that has been carrying their bills since I've been in the legislature. I'm if we want to carry this over, we want to move it on. I'm not going.
Yeah, I if you don't mind, so that because there are too many small nonprofits that are out there that is going to impact, and people are applying more and more, and they do great work as far as extension of community services that cities and things don't provide. I just need to know how this is going to impact. When I first started, I said I have a personal question that I would need to ask you about this, and you said don't ask me. But I think we need to know how it's going to impact these smaller. Corporate people have the money that they can do it, but I don't know what to tell them.
I mean, essentially every homeowners association, in fact, would eventually come under this, in 2025, yes. So I think it merits discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Senator Singleton had a motion to carry it over. Senator Coleman Madison second that. Any opposition to carrying it over?
Nope.
All right. That motion is approved. Thank you, committee. That ends the committee today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.